Hi there, welcome to FM Language. In today's class, we will talk about the problem of the word, the category word, in morphosyntactic analysis. As we will see, it is not always convenient to talk about words when we engage in morphosyntactic analysis. Let us take, for instance, the sentence, "She is not mad at you." And let us take the string, "is not." We will probably say or think that is a word and not is a verb. However, if we compare the sentence, "She is not mad at you," with the sentence, "She isn't mad at you," you will probably think that the element isn't is a verb. So we got a problem here. How come that in is not we have two words and in isn't we have only one word, when in fact it is undeniable that in both sentences we have one constituent, is, and a whole other constituent, not. And in the second sentence we have a word, isn't, that seems to be made up of two different elements. We will say that the word isn't is made up of two different constituents. Is and the affix, the negative affix, and apostrophe T. Therefore, we need to conclude that a much more convenient term and category and notion to use in grammar is that of constituent. So is a constituent, not is a constituent, and apostrophe T is also a constituent, only that the latter, and apostrophe T, unlike not, needs to be attached to a host. That is, we need to go for doesn't, don't, isn't, aren't. That is, it's always attached to some auxiliary verb. So we're not going to prescribe here the use of the term word. All we're saying is that is a word, not is a verb, isn't is a verb. However, if we resort to the notion of constituent, we will have a clearer picture of the way in which grammar works. Because in the sentence, again, she's not mad at you, or the sentence, she isn't mad at you, we can find similarities in the sense that is a constituent that belongs to the category verb, not is a constituent that belongs to the category adverb, and isn't is a word made up of is a constituent, again, a verb, and an apostrophe T, a negative affix, a whole other constituent. So in either case, we have two constituents. Is not, two constituents, isn't, two constituents. One signaling present tense is, and the other one signaling negation. Therefore, we must conclude that the notion constituent is much more powerful and precise when accounting for morphosyntactic behavior or morphosyntactic phenomena. As we will see, it will enable us to clarify a lot of notions that are and will be, as we will see, very obscure if we stick to the notion of word. A contrastive analysis between two languages, in this case English and Spanish, should enable us to further clarify the advantages of using the notion or resorting to the notion of constituent when it comes to morphosyntactic analysis. In order to illustrate our point, let us take the word Ponelo. That is a Spanish word that means put it there. So in Spanish we have a word, Ponelo, pone, put, lo, it, that is made up of two different constituents, in the same way as the word isn't is made up of two different constituents in English. Therefore, what we can see is that the notion of constituent or constituency is much more suitable for grammatical analysis both in English and Spanish. Now, the word Ponelo in Spanish is made up of two constituents, pone, put, and lo, it. English, however, requires an adverb. We cannot simply say put it. need to say put it there, or put it on, or put it out. There's always some kind of adverb or prepositional phrase. We can say put it on the table. We need some locative, some spatial element as a constituent of the sentence for the sentences to be considered to be grammatical. In addition, notice that both languages require a tacit subject. Put it there or Ponelo allí, Ponelo allí require a subject you that is not mentioned. That is why we call it tacit. In English we go for you, tacit you or elliptical you, and in Spanish we say vos. So let us now analyze the sentences Ponelo and put it there in terms of constituency structure. How many constituents are there in the utterances, let's call them utterances, Ponelo, and put it there. The utterance Ponelo consists of only one word, Ponelo. The word Ponelo has clearly two constituents, pone, verb, lo, pronoun. In addition, there is an elliptical place, as in English, put it there, Ponelo allí, allí, allá, here, there, over there, may or may not be mentioned, which means to say that the locative element may be present or elliptical. What is also elliptical or tacit is the subject. Therefore, we have four, not two, constituents. An elliptical subject, you, a verb, put, a pronoun, it, and a locative element, there. You put it there. Vos, pone, lo, allí. However, if we resorted to the category or notion of word for our morphosyntactic analysis, we would be really in trouble, given that Ponelo is only one word, but there are four constituents in an utterance that consists of only one word. And what we're interested in grammar, is the number of constituents, because constituents have a manifestation at a logical level. We know that the verb put requires three elements: an agent, that is the doer of the action, the person who will put the thing or the element in some place, the element in question that has been translated or moved from one place to the other, and the location or destination of the element. So there are four logical elements and four constituents. You put it there. In Spanish, we should also analyze the same utterance in the same way. So, ponelo, pone, put, lo, it will require a tacit subject, vos, you, and an elliptical or non-elliptical locative element. Allí, allá, there, here, o aquí in Spanish. So, let us draw some conclusions. A. Both sentences, ponelo and put it there, contain a verb, put and pone. B. Both sentences contain a pronoun that functions as the object or objective pronoun of the verb pone. It in English, lo in Spanish. C. In both sentences we have tacit subjects, given that we're dealing with imperative mood sentences. D. In English we require an obligatory locative element, and in Spanish we may or we may not have this locative element either at a phonological or orthographic level. That is, we do not need to write it or pronounce it, but we know that it is there. When I say we know that it is there, what we're saying is that it is present at a logical level. Again, we need to put something somewhere. So the element may or may not be present in Spanish, whereas in English it should be there, it should be pronounced or written. Therefore, we must conclude that in both languages, English and Spanish, the sentence ponelo and its translation into English, put it there, are made up of 4 different constituents. Some languages, like Spanish, are agglutinative. That is, they tend to put together all the elements. That is, we will have like more affixes, more clitics that will attach to some kind of host. So in the case of Ponelo, we have 2 constituents that make up a word. Spanish is a highly agglutinative language. English is not. However, there is some agglutination in English, given that we say isn't, don't, won't, aren't, and there are many other examples. Therefore, we tend to classify languages as agglutinative or non-agglutinative. But in fact, what we should do probably is think about agglutination in terms of gradability or degrees of agglutination. That is, Spanish is higher in degree of agglutination. We will find that constituents are very often attachments or affixes that will make up words that are made up of several constituents, whereas English will be a language that we can call non-agglutinative because the constituents come in the form of words, separate words, as in you put the book on the table. Conclusion: agglutination is a question of gradation or degree. F. Things may get a bit complicated when we talk about spoken language. Notice that in both English and Spanish we say Ponelo, put it there, and there are no chunks in the pronunciation. That is, in spoken language we'll be talking about tone units. So the tone unit, that is the unit of analysis of phonology, will consist of a stretch of speech that is made up of a number of grammatical constituents. In the case of Ponelo, it's run-on, there are no pauses between the constituents, and in the case of put it there are no pauses either. So it's one tone unit and one clause with 4 constituents. Put it there. So if in spoken language we say Ponelo in Spanish and put it there in English and there are no pauses whatsoever, we should be thinking that probably agglutination is a fact that pertains to written language, because we see the division between the words in written language. Therefore, the conclusion that we must arrive at is the following: the word is a unit of writing, not a unit of grammar, not a unit of speech. So probably you may be thinking, I can talk and I can think of the number of words that make up the sentences that I am producing when I speak. The reason why that is the case is because you are literate, and given that you're literate, you're thinking in terms of words, and you can translate those words, or the logic of chunking into words, the logic of writing into speech and spoken language, and you can say, okay, I have said this, put it on the table, and when I say put it on the table, there are put it on the table, there are 5 words. The logic of speech is totally different. It's run on. So we go for put it there, just one stretch. So agglutination is a phenomenon that pertains to written language, not spoken language. In spoken language, we should be thinking about other units of analysis, and we have different objectives. Our conclusion then is that if we again resort to the notion of constituency and constituent, we can analyze both English and Spanish, different languages, and also both written and spoken versions of English and Spanish. So this is the reason why we're saying that the category constituent will enable us to analyze grammar in a universal sense, that is, grammar for all languages, English, Spanish, and many other languages, and grammar for different media, written or spoken. So, The usefulness of the notion of constituency and constituent lies in the fact that it will enable us to analyze both written and spoken language on the one hand and any language on the other hand. We have given examples about English and Spanish where we could analyze, and in fact a lot of grammarians and linguists are analyzing a lot of languages in terms of their constituency or constituent structure. Our last point, G, is the following. We have said that there are constituents that make up utterances or sentences or clauses or phrases. Different units of analysis, we will discuss these in due time. What is important to point out then is that the constituents in any language, in any means of communication, belong to categories. This is the last point we want to make. So again, the constituent put is a verb, the constituent it is a pronoun, the constituent you is a pronoun. You, subjective pronoun, put, verb, it, objective pronoun, there, adverb. You put it there, put it there. There are 4 constituents that belong to different categories. So constituents are classified into categories. In our next class, we will talk about the fact that there are different constituents that belong to different categories. You may be familiarized with categories such as verb, think of break, run, noun, table, desk, on, at, in, prepositions, or they can also be considered adverbs in some cases, and many other categories. So in our next class we will be talking about categories of words and categories of phrases. What a phrase is something that we will discuss also in our next class. See you!